I would like to move that the December 1st meeting of the Diversity, Racial Equity, and Inclusion Committee be started. And as our first order of business, just wanted to review the minutes for our last meeting, which was the 24th of November. Did everyone receive the minutes?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And I'm assuming everybody had an opportunity to review the minutes.
Yes.
Could I get a motion to approve the minutes of the November 24th meeting?
This is Latasha Wright, and I motion to approve the minutes from November 24th for the Diversity, Racial Equity, and Inclusion Committee.
Can I get a second to that motion?
Lauren seconds.
All right.
Thank you.
Everyone approve, say aye.
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 Opposed?
Aye.
Aye. All right. The minutes of the November 24th meeting have been approved. So our next item on the agenda is obviously the continuation of the work that we had started last week, which is actually going down the list of our top goals. And I believe there were about 12 or 13 goals. And what we were doing, just to refresh folks' memory, is to go through that list and identify the individuals who are going to be on the sub teams to work on those individual goals as they were listed. And I think what we had indicated at our last meeting is that folks were to take some time to review the list and be able to or be ready to identify those goals that they would like to work on. And I think we did get volunteers for the very first goal, which was updating the curriculum for the Chelmsford Public Schools. We did have 3 individuals who had raised their hand for that particular team. Now, one of the things that I wanted to check in on, just to make sure that I was clear, did we set a limit to the number of individuals on each of our teams? I thought it was like 3 or 4, or did we not set that limit?
Well, we only set the limit for the people that could actually talk about it without having to post a meeting.
Okay.
But we didn't talk about setting limits to the actual subcommittees and whether or not they were going to be posting subcommittee meetings. So I guess
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. My clarification is, when we're talking about teams for goals, are we talking about teams for the goal categories and then breaking down into subgroups over the individual goals? Because it seems to me that there's a lot of work in education, and 3 people isn't enough to do all the work in education. But if they're just working on that one goal within education, then 3 people would probably be enough.
That was my understanding. Was my understanding, is that we were going through each of the individual goals and identifying in those folks who would be working on that particular goal. So what we're continuing to do in this meeting is to go through each of those individual goals and then identify those folks who are going to be working on that goal. Because you're right, there's an awful lot of work to be done, and to say that 3 people were going to handle everything in the education category, that's just not going to happen. So no, again, just for clarification, we're looking for individuals to commit at this point to one particular goal as we're discussing it. We'll populate that with the individuals who have expressed interest in that. And then, once we've gone through, all of these goals, then if for some reason, I don't know, there's one goal that gets nobody who raises their hand, we can have a conversation. I don't think that's going to happen, but at least we'll have an opportunity to kind of revisit things once we've gotten through the whole list.
Because when it comes to subcommittees, it seems to me that it would make sense, just for cohesiveness, to have the subcommittees be based on the categories, and then have the members that are taking these individual goals be part of that subcommittee. Does that make sense? So that everything that's education related, at least those 3 people plus whoever else would be on that education subcommittee. I mean, that would actually meet and discuss it and really work on all the educational pieces. Because my fear is that if we break all the goals out just randomly without a cohesive team in place that all supports that particular group of goals, I just was thinking that it might strengthen the effort if you had a education subcommittee, a town culture subcommittee, and a public relations subcommittee, and then within that subcommittee they kind of accepted who's going to take on what goals and action items. Does that make any sense?
I'm trying to understand what the subcommittee then is sort of an umbrella, if you will, for the other individual goals. I guess I'm trying to understand the role of the subcommittee.
All right, I'll let Susan speak. See, she's got her hand up.
So I feel, Tricia, like what you're trying to say is that we might have the teams take a category, work on the goals within that category, but then maybe a subcommittee would take action on those goals? Is that what you're thinking?
The opposite way? I was thinking the opposite way, that the subcommittee would be established to make sure that all of the goals under the education umbrella were being addressed, and that it all supported the overall vision of the committee, with regarding education. I guess that's what I was thinking, that there would be an umbrella subcommittee, and then the smaller teams would take pieces of it. That's the way it seemed to make sense to me. Latasha's hand up.
So I definitely see your idea that you have in mind, but what I would be afraid of is that we would start working in different silos, and I still want us to work jointly as a committee. So like Brian and I took the initiative to champion the questions for the police chief. Well, next meeting, we're going to have an open discussion about those questions so everybody has input. If that means that we don't meet everything under that category, it's okay as long as we're all working together for a common goal.
Okay.
That's how I see it.
Okay. Just trying to stay organized in my head, which is not always easy.
No,
and feel free if you guys would prefer to have different sub-teams, that's just voice your opinion so that we can make a unanimous decision about their approach.
Yeah. No, I think that makes sense. Rachel, I see your hands up.
I think there might be some areas, and this might have been what you were getting at, Tricia, that we might have some efficiencies with certain people, especially in the education area. We might have some contacts that people start getting closer with. And I wonder if we should just have some consistency there with some points of contact that might reach out to some other groups, and we still manage it where it's all coming into the main group and we're still collaborating like that, but let's also leverage efficiencies with people building relationships and getting to know different systems around the town.
Thank you, Rachel. That's what I was trying to say. Yes, thank you.
Maybe we have to do it by case basis then. We determine how big is this particular initiative, and then from there say, okay, we need a sub-team for it.
Okay.
So
is that a nice compromise, everyone?
Yep.
Can I just kind of clarify? So I would see that mean that you might have a group who works on the goals like Latasha and Brian did for the questions, but always come back to the big committee to talk about those goals, and then maybe break the tasks out to whomever wants to then form those little teams out of the entire committee, perhaps. So it's never just kept in a subcommittee that exclusively works on that topic. It always comes back to the entire group kind of for review and discussion, and see who wants to get involved in different pieces of that. Is that what you're thinking?
I think that could work. My concern about that is that if we, take that particular approach, so we're going to use Latasha and Brian's work, for an example. They go off, they pull these things together, they do a presentation to us, and they do the list of, we review what they've done, and, let's assume for the moment that, all of a sudden they're 4 other people that want to now get involved and change the direction or add a bunch of different questions or whatever, it starts to now kind of fly in the face of the work that Latasha and Brian had done, and that you could potentially have some issues. Now, again, that's my concern. Might just be mine, might not be an issue. I think what we need to be aware of, or at least to be careful about, is that we're not, kind of doubling and tripling work. I mean, the idea of having teams of people focused in on a specific goal is that they can put the attention where they believe it's needed. They come back and share with us, share with the larger group, and say, hey, this is what we've done. Does it make sense? And if there's some input that others have, that's great. But we don't want to set an expectation that, oh yeah, they go off and work it, but you can always bring it back, and we can kind of start from scratch. If for some reason, and I can't really see this happening, but I'm just concerned because things can take turns that we don't expect. If folks come back with something and nobody in the group likes it, then I think we just all need to accept that, okay, well, that team might need to go back to the drawing board. I don't see that happening. I just want to make sure that we don't end up doing extra work and working on the goals several different times, because we're entrusting the team to, they understand what the direction is. We're entrusting them to pull that information together, to present it to us, and make sure that we're all in the same direction. And I kind of see it as hopefully we're just rubber stamping, what the team is doing. So again, I don't know how others feel about that. I mean, I could be off base. Any other thoughts about that? I don't see any hands up, but Brian, you look like you want to say something. You're on mute, Brian. You're on mute.
All right, how about now? All right. So as a counterpoint to what you were trying to get at, Phil, the work that we are doing in this committee needs to be done right. I don't care how many times it needs to be done. If somebody goes off and does work and it doesn't meet with approval of the committee as a whole, then I think it absolutely should be thrown out and done over again. There's a difference between doing something fast and doing it right. And if it takes longer to get it right, I don't care how many times we have to do it. That's my opinion.
And I think we're all in agreement with that. What I'm trying to get clarity on what the process is going to be. That's all I'm trying to do, is to understand what's the process that we're all going to use, that we all agree with, buy into, and go forward with.
Well, let's start the conversation based on the way that you originally presented it, Phil, and see how far we get. And if it seems like, I mean, I know what I'm interested in.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure other people do as well.
Right.
I was just looking at it at a broader picture that I was going to be part of. So I can drill it down, not a problem at all. So let's continue on with the conversation the way you presented it.
All right. Okay. So I think the next, if we look at the list, the next goal that I see is the creating more diverse representation in the schools. And I believe that it was focused in on the hiring, making sure that there are more teachers, more staff in the school system that represents a more diverse workforce. Is that what people recall from that goal as well?
Mm-hmm.
Brian?
Yeah, I just have a question. Do we want to do this goal by goal or person by person?
That's It doesn't matter to me. I was going to go goal by goal so that we can mark it off. It doesn't. I don't have a need to do it one way or the other.
Well, I think it would be better to do it person by person, because the whole point of asking people to look over the goal list over the past week was to figure out what we were interested in working on as our priorities. So like, yes, we voted on these things, but I think it's a better idea to figure out who's passionate about what. I mean, that was the ask. So
Okay.
I think it makes sense to go from a person perspective.
All right, great. So we'll start with you.
Oh, okay, sure.
I have a
Yeah, go ahead, Shreeze.
I just have a question. Are we to pick one? Is it one per person, or can we show an interest in two things, or how does that work?
Yeah, I don't think that there was any real discussion around, you know, how many people we'd have on each goal. So, you know, I think it's clearly, you know, I would suspect that there'd be more than one, that people might be interested in more than just one area. So I wouldn't limit it. I would, you know, I guess the main thing I think about is, you know, as each member thinks about his or her time, how much focus, how much energy are you going to have to devote to making sure everything's done right? You know, so you know if you're working on one or two, that might be plenty. You know, someone else, if you feel like you've got the bandwidth to handle 4 different you know goals, then by all means. So I you know that would be my take on it. Any other thoughts? No, I think to answer your question, folks should be able to sign up for as many as they want, but also, you know, making sure that they have the energy, the bandwidth to handle whatever they sign up for.
It just seems faster to go with the person by person, in my opinion.
Sounds good.
Susan, you're all set? You're muted.
Unmute.
Sorry. So I know that last week when I wasn't even here, someone said that they knew I was interested in education, and they were correct. And it's 36 years as an educator. That's where my knowledge is. That's where my passion is. And I know that I think it was Maureen had sent out an email to try to get myself and Lauren and her together to start talking about these goals. So I didn't actually try to do anything with the education goals, but I would like to work on all of them because I think there's a way to tie them together. They're not necessarily going to remain the 4 separate goals that were on the survey. I think they're going to tie together. So for myself, I didn't do work on any specific wording, but I know that's the goals I want to work on with that smaller group. And that's all I did about it. I didn't try to do anything independently on that, other than I've been doing some research on what an anti-racist school would be like. So I've got a lot of things I've been saving to use when I meet with the other people.
Yeah, the ask was for
That's all
exactly what you, right, but the ask was just for that.
Yeah.
It wasn't for anything beyond that.
Right. So like that's what I did. And so just as you had said last week, I already know that's my passion, and that's the one I would think I can be most helpful with.
So you're signing up for all 4 of the education goals. Atta girl.
Yes, I am.
Done.
Yeah.
So for my part, I had looked at the ones that are all about town culture and holidays and signage and Indigenous Peoples Day. And, you know, I had previously inquired about getting onto the public celebration committee. And so those, I think, all sort of tie together. And that was one of the things that I remember being really drilled into pretty hard at the listening session with the select board. So I would like to put myself on those guys. And if that happens to also, you know, fold in the public health issue, racism as a public health issue part, because it just happens to be where, you know, my attentions are, then I'm perfectly okay with jumping in on that one too.
Sharice, is your hand up?
Yes, I'm interested in communications and initiatives to attract and promote minority-owned businesses in Chelmsford, and organizing and/or sponsoring a speaker lecture series.
right. Rachel?
I'll jump in. I'm also interested, echoing Brian's stuff. The town culture is all very much of interest, especially like the surveying, the proclamation, holidays. So I think that makes sense clumped. And the other piece that I'm willing to help on and have interest in is attracting and promoting minority-owned businesses.
I'm ready to jump in, Brian, when you are ready. I mean, not Brian, I'm sorry, Phil.
Yep.
Okay, thanks.
We'll jump right in.
Okay, thanks. I would like to participate in the town-sponsored diversity celebrations. The update signage around town to include more images and examples of diversity. I would also like to help out with the building the partnership with the police department, as well as collaborating with community influencers to share our goals and gather input. And I've also put myself down for, don't know if I have the, it's more kind of a side thing, is when the education committee gets to the point where they want to collaborate with groups outside of Chelmsford to cross promote events, that seems like it might spill out over other areas besides just education. So I'd like to help out with that as well.
Okay.
I'll jump in.
Jennifer.
Yeah, I'm interested in communications as well, specifically the Chelmsford Police Department, and initiatives to attract and promote minority-owned businesses. And I do also have an interest in use of data from surveys to create an equity plan and implement goals. That was in a town culture.
Mm-hmm. And I as I was reviewing the list, I was looking at that, and I didn't see anywhere where there was a goal that we had, at least in these top list of goals, that spoke to a survey, creating a survey, giving a survey. It seems like that well, let me ask the question. Is there an assumption that there's some information out there already, or is it more that connected with this, even though it's kind of not said, is that we would be putting together some sort of survey that would assess town needs, interests, concerns around diversity related issues? Because I didn't see anything that said that specifically, but I'm assuming that that's behind that particular goal.
My assumption was the latter also.
Yes, as well as mine. That there's nothing currently existing, that we would have to put something in place.
Okay.
And I would suggest that it would be later rather than sooner, because honestly, I think we really need to be very much aware of the way that we want to build awareness in this community first. And then we have to wake people up first and then change the conversation before we really start asking what, I mean, I really just feel like people need to be more aware of their own biases first.
Right.
And
I saw it more as, and I agree with you, I absolutely agree with that. But I saw it more as asking people of color what their experiences are here.
There you go.
That's where I was coming at it from. What's your experience here? Yeah, that's where I was. But I do think that I agree with you that it would have to be much broader in the future. But I was thinking initially, definitely for POC.
Mm-hmm.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I think POC would be likely to respond to something like that at this point. I don't think white people would be responding to something like that until after COVID. After COVID, we can start dealing more with the white people. I don't think they would be receptive to something like that before it's over, as unfortunate as that is.
So I think that can be really important, though, even like in education and framing it. A lot of the things I was reading are about how white teachers say they are very willing to teach an anti-racist curriculum, but they have no idea how to. And they need to hear from people of color about those perspectives so that they can think hard about their own role in that before they can change how they teach. So I don't know that we want to wait too long to get some of that information, as Jennifer said, because it can really help change the culture in some of these organizations where we need to do it.
I wouldn't wait on getting a survey of people of color. I would not wait on that. I'm talking about a town-wide initiative. I just think that there's a lot of work to do first.
Got
Could
it.
we open that up to not just people of color, but other subgroups as well? I think
How do
like
we
people
build
with
the
disabilities,
database?
like LGBTQ type things like that would be helpful.
How do we build a database to send out that information? Or first of all, creating the survey, but then how do we determine, where the database is going to come from?
I have not put much thought into this, but off the top of my head, something where folks opt in. Like we do some sort of messaging and a lot of pushing the message out to everyone and say like, we want like all of these diverse groups to please like add your input, and then we take it on people to self-identify themselves and come forward and give their opinion.
So that particular goal is going to be, a significant one, because folks are going to have to give some real thought to not only what set of questions are going to be asked, but who's kind of doing the asking and how to format that and get at folks. So people on that team are going to have a kind of a tall order in that space. So I think folks, as long as folks are kind of aware of that, I think but I think it makes sense. I mean, at some point, you've got to get your arms around where the town is. But I also think Tricia makes an excellent point that we need to kind of time how we're getting certain information to the town and what we're asking from what we're asking from them in return. Excuse me. And we just need to kind of make sure we're thinking that through so that we're getting what we want from folks.
Yeah,
so,
we want positive input, and that
makes sense.
So Phil, I just want to make sure that you got the three that I was interested: the Chelmsford Police,
Yep.
the minority-owned businesses, and of course the big undertaking of the database, the survey.
And I wanted to add the police, because when you look at organizing and sponsoring a speaker lecture series, I include the police in that as well. So that kind of bridges into that a little bit, folds into it.
Okay.
Somewhat.
Lauren, you have your hand up?
Yes, I know that I'm already on the education committee because I've been in the system for 24 years. Just a quick little thing. I know that there was a school committee meeting tonight. They happen to be, I think, on the same nights we have our meetings. And they are doing a professional development in the school, Linda Hirsch, but it's optional. It's after school. They're offering 10 professional development points to teachers who read How to Be an Anti-Racist, and they're having meetings. But it's in the afternoon. So I didn't say anything to the assistant superintendent, but I will, because I thought it should be part of the day of professional development, not optional after school, because teachers are so stressed out. So that was a good thing and a bad thing. But I also want to be in the town celebration. Because I'm on Chelmsford Telemedia Board, I think I can also help with publicity of town celebrations. Plus, that sort of ties in with education and the kids. So that's the other one that I'm interested in, is the town culture. Okay, but I wanted to let you know about that was being announced at the school committee meeting tonight, that they were proposing that, reading that book, which I happen to have been reading it anyway. But
Lauren, what book? How to Be an Anti-Racist? Was that the
yes,
book?
yes.
Thank you.
I'm curious, have others on the panel, have any other folks read that particular book?
No, I am currently reading. So you want to talk about race, and it's about systematic racism in the United States.
Just
There
curious.
are quite a few books out there.
Yeah, there's a lot out. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Let's see.
So we haven't heard from Joseph, or let's see, who else is on the call?
Well,
Jill, do you mind sharing which committees you're interested in? And Laura, you still have your hand raised.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah. Hey, everybody. So I don't know that I could commit to being on like a committee, but I'd be happy to like floater and contribute to specific things. I think if anything, the one that jumped out to me with the most interest would be like the town culture. So I know a lot of the objectives you guys were talking about, the survey and the town signage, things like that. I'm really interested in that, promoting minority and underrepresented groups, businesses here in Chelmsford too. I just don't know that I could fully commit to a subcommittee position, if you will.
Thank you.
And
I guess that leaves me. Is there anyone else?
well, and me.
Well, you're on all of them, right, Phil?
Yeah, I guess.
So my top interest is the communications pillar. The discussion with the police chief, organizing public speakers to come in, and attracting and promoting minority-owned businesses in Chelmsford.
Okay. Anyone else?
I don't think there's anyone else on the call.
Okay, all right. And I was just going to focus some attention on the speaker series and lecture. So any assistance in that space, and as well as collaborate with outside groups outside of Chelmsford to cross promote our events, and even to perhaps expand on that a bit and look at networking and outreaching to groups with like-minded groups within the town of Chelmsford, as in addition to like-minded groups outside of the town. So essentially building a network of similar kinds of organizations in the region. So that's the something that I feel kind of strongly about. That in the lecture series in particular.
I have a question. Since we did the proclamation and we voted on it, but urging the town of Chelmsford to declare racism as a public health issue, should I add that to the proclamation so we can just check that box as done once the select board signs it?
My recollection is that we had some conversation about that. I don't know if it was the last meeting or the meeting before, and
this is a public health.
My understanding, I think we didn't want to push on that at this point, given some of the other things that the Board of Health was doing. That's what I recall from our
yeah, because I didn't know if I should word it a little bit different, that maybe I can just say, instead of public health issue, I can say something that's not going to cross the Board of Health's path and make it more of a crisis situation that the select board might be more in control of. If you say anything about health, it's going to be Board of Health related. So I don't know if you just wanted me to add something that might, bring that or not. Just let me know.
Rachel and Joe both have their hand raised. Go ahead, Rachel.
I was going to say, I think it's a great opportunity to just strengthen our wording there and sneak that in a little bit there in a way that still plays off like the delicate balance that we want with the Board of Health right now.
How about just declaring it?
To add to that, I don't know that. Oh, I was just going to say, I saw today that in USA Today, it said racism is declared a public health issue in 145 cities and counties across 27 states. So I don't know that we're necessarily rocking the boat too much. It seems like a lot of other communities are doing this. So perhaps if we provide that info, it might be a lot easier for them to move forward with it and not spend a ton of time, because it seems like that seems like the blocker right now, that they're kind of overwhelmed with COVID and everything else going on. So if we could kind of provide them a blueprint that other communities have followed, would that be helpful in your opinion, Tricia?
Yeah, if you get me that information and then I can just see which board, I mean, again, I'm just thinking that anything that's public health related is going to be Board of Health under their jurisdiction. So I
Sure.
just didn't know
I'll
if,
send
like
that to you.
Rachel said, we just, strengthened our language with the proclamation for the select board, and then also, went after the Board of Health to look for the public health issue. I don't know if select board can issue public health issues, without the Board of Health involved. That's the only thing I don't know. And I guess I can ask the question and get back to you guys on that. I just thought it might be, like Rachel said, an opportunity to, add that.
Is it perhaps calling it maybe a public crisis without using the word health?
That's exactly what I was looking at, was public crisis. That's exactly what I was going to see if I could sneak that into the proclamation, and, well, not sneak it in because it should be impactful, but add it in some way, maybe to that last, now therefore we promise to, treat this as a public crisis and give it the attention it deserves, or something like that. I mean, it's just something to think about. It just helps fortify the goal.
Sharice has her hand raised.
So one of the things I was thinking about, we talk about under communications, like today is the 65th anniversary of the Montgomery boycott. And so as a committee, these are things that we have to be aware of. And also, I think, because that's so significant, and so, something where those types of information, whether it's a calendar of events of things that are happening, like when we had Diwali and Indigenous, somehow, part of that communications, I see like having some information be available to all people, because as long as they know, it might prompt people to kind of want to know more about that. Like, oh, what does that mean? People always look up stuff just to be intelligent about it, and it may prompt them to read a little more, become a little more educated. So somehow, getting that communication out there in the town through a town letter. I know we do have a town newsletter, but I don't know how, if we have our own, or I don't know if I'm being too forward, thinking too big, but some kind of way that we need to, make that aware. This is the 65th anniversary of the Montgomery boycott. That should be something that our committee should be putting out there some kind of way.
Sharice, I agree. And I think that we need to look at research worldwide cultural calendars and make that information available. Now, we can have our own calendar on our page, but it's just what we decide to push out. But again, I don't know anything about what you just mentioned. So, I need to know what is important, what isn't important, and then we can share it. But I don't know anything about that, and I'm sad to say, because nobody ever told me. So
no, it's okay. We're all learning, and it just, it's one of those things. I miss things too. It's just life is so fast, and we're in such a crisis with this pandemic.
It's
and
on that goal.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
and that's what it is, to inform, to just make sure that we are aware as a committee, if we're talking about diversity and inclusion, certain days to be, I think it was Latasha who brought up Diwali and the lighting up. And I actually didn't know, and I've had a friend over for years, so I sent her a candle,
Well, does that mean, Sharice, you're also going to be on this town-sponsored diversity celebrations and unrecognized Black History Month, Juneteenth, et cetera committee? We've got myself, Brian, and Lauren on there. Did you want to add yourself to that committee?
Yeah, why not?
All right, you can go ahead and start researching those calendars. Feed me information. If you feed me information, I can get it out there. That would be awesome.
And then the committee, when you hear something that I forget, I'm depending on you to tell me about it.
And there may even be in existence historical significance calendars. I know certain places do have those where the calendar is specifically populates issues having to do with diversity. Those very kinds of anniversaries, if you will, that you were speaking about, Sharice, already there for the taking, because none of us know all that stuff. I mean, just face it, we just don't know. But if there's a place that we can get that and link it into our website, at least as one source, and then try to figure out, to your point, Sharice, how to get it out to people. You know, that would be fantastic. I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. I'm doing good if I can remember my children's birthdays someday. So
Yeah.
it's all good. It's all
Oh,
good.
don't go there. I had a nightmare year where I was off by one day on my middle daughter's birthday, and she's 35 and she's not letting me forget it. So I understand. Absolutely. Well, there were.
Lauren, your hand is raised. One moment.
Oh, I was just going to say, I think the calendar is a really kind of nice idea because I'm sorry, Sharice, I had no idea what day was today either. I don't know what day yesterday is, but that could be sent to the schools, you know, as something that'd be really wonderful. Like, here's a calendar, please talk about it in your classes and give it to teachers to hang up in the wall and say, this is our diversity calendar for you. I think it's a great idea and it could be a great PR and it could tie in everything. I'm just throwing my 2 cents in there.
Speaking about PR and tying in things, because I love the idea. I wasn't even thinking of printed calendar, Lauren. So that's really a really great idea to get the word out. And we were talking about in the past of logos and things like that, because I really want to start, all this talk about people's lawn signs disappearing and all of that. I want to get a lawn sign that speaks to what we're trying to do, that's graphic, that's easy to read, and just spread it out there. Like, everybody who signs that pledge gets a sign. That's just what it's like. If you want the sign, you sign the pledge, and we'll go put it in your yard. But
I love that idea. However, there is a budget component to it.
Don't worry about the money part, because we just have to have the ideas, then we can say, and then we cost it out, and then we ask for the money. So don't worry about that. But
So we can quote you, Tricia, when it comes to money. We can say, Tricia told us, don't worry about the budget stuff.
I'm very good at getting money.
Okay.
Well, that's good to know. We're glad to have you.
Thank you.
That's great.
So we need
I just wanted to share something real quickly. So on yesterday, a man pulled in our driveway, was ranting and raving, swearing to the point where my neighbor came over and he pulled out of our driveway. He was upset because we had the Biden Harris sign. And he was like, so my neighbor was so concerned that because he was being so belligerent, and my child was upstairs, my youngest, and she heard the ranting, but she couldn't see what was really happening because the person was in our driveway. So our neighbor got the license plates number, and so it was just and I was very nervous because my daughter was home, and and he was from Rhode Island. So that was the other thing. Wow. Yeah. And I mean, my neighbor said he was cursing all the way from the point of his driveway to mine and pulled in. So, we just have to be very aware of what's happening surrounding us. And, it was just remarkable.
The majority of the town is, this is the thing. If we can build enough momentum where more people are showing support for what we're doing, then you're going to minimize that negative effect, because they can rant and rave all they want. You're the minority. Go deal with it. Goodbye. I mean, that's what we're hoping to do. We're trying to build that movement right here in town. And the more people show that support, then the less those people have any audience whatsoever. I'm sorry that happened to you. That stinks.
Who spends that much energy being a jerk? What does that do for you? I don't get it. I mean, one of our neighbors, a guy around the corner from my house, has a Trump 2020 no more bullshit flag still hanging from his house. Still. And I have been so tempted to go spray paint the word loser on that thing, but I have resisted. Because I didn't do it because I know that's a bad idea. But oh my gosh.
Okay.
Wow,
Apolitical conversations.
Yeah.
That's right. Lauren, your hand's still up.
Oh, well, I was just thinking that it's December, and I know this is weird. I kind of like this calendar idea, at least to the schools. Do you think we have to wait to get it done for the following year, or is it a project that we could do like now? And speaking of that, shouldn't we get a logo immediately for correspondence. Where's that? Where do we stand with the diversity logo for our committee in our town? We would-
So I had mentioned that I had briefly talked to Madalena Alves, who's one of the art teachers at the high school,
Right.
about the idea, but said I'd get back to her. I don't know, is our mission statement enough to kind of give them an idea of what we're looking for?
I would think the title of our committee is enough to give them what they were looking for. Don't you think? In the mission
Why not
statement?
send the mission statement too, you know?
Yeah, I mean, could we get started on a
We
logo?
can
at the
pull
very
words
least?
out of it.
But don't we need more than a logo? We need a message. We need a
Right.
all-inclusive message that has the graphic and the text. That's a clear, simple thing. So we need those graphic designers and to.
So you think we need a tagline for the logo, or just not the name of the committee?
I think so. I mean, we can't say Black Lives
Unity in our community.
because that's
Remember
just
that rhyme?
Unity in our community. I was just
went
gonna
to
say
love
that.
one. It's so
Jennifer has her hand
banal.
up.
Anyway.
It's my way of rapping.
Oh my.
There you go.
You sound like my son, Phil.
I'd just like to have some
have
action.
a team to work on this right now. Do we want to just go ahead and put a team together to work on a logo, tagline, graphic that we can start promoting?
That'd be great, because the more we get starting to communicate with the outside world, when we get these goals down, we're going to want to have, the mess. I think it's important.
Now, are we also saying we want to call this out as a specific goal? That way, we're going to add. Are we adding this to the goal sheet?
Well, doesn't this kind of go along with updating signage around town to include more images of diversity?
Okay, yeah.
It kind of goes with that goal that Joe and I are on right now. So we're looking for people to add task that goal, because signage would start with a logo. So who else wants to be on this with me and Joe? Because Joe can't commit 100%, and I have no graphic ability.
If you recall, we had talked about, but we said we talked about doing something at the Chelmsford Center for the Arts, remember? But if we need to do it right away, we don't have time for that.
I think a contest is a lot of time and energy.
Yeah.
I would agree.
I can help out with that a bit.
Who is that?
I don't have,
Rachel?
it's Rachel.
Okay.
I don't have like a great graphics background, but I can definitely help out.
And Latasha, I can help with the tagline.
All right, very good. And Sue, did you want to reach out to your graphic artist teacher or your arts teacher to see if maybe she wants to contribute something, or ask? Or maybe I'm sorry.
I eat lunch with them every day, and I'm sorry. So I can do that too for Susan.
Okay, all right, sounds good.
I just have to remind myself. I'm going to put it in my little note right now. Maddie's actually out. She was out today. But,
Go ahead, Lauren. That's quicker.
Yeah, it's quicker. I mean, I'll see her.
Drafts of something. Just have them submit a few things that we can look at.
But should we give them a tagline first, or should we just tell them the name of the committee and the mission statement?
And see if they can come up with the tagline with.
Oh yeah, kids are very talented. I mean, I've got access to a lot of kids. Okay, we'll do.
Submit something real quick, and we'll see what we get.
Yeah, I think
we're on the agenda for next week, Phil. Just to see. Well, is next week too soon? Probably for them to just whip out.
Well, tomorrow they're working at home, but maybe we could get a few by next. You'd be surprised. I have access to a lot of kids myself.
Don't let them think about it too long. Let them come up.
That's great. It seems kind of quick to me, but if you think that's enough time for creative people to come up with something that's eye-catching that we can use.
Well, we'll see. It might take a whole week, but I can prime the pump right now and see if we get anything by Tuesday, and then we'll just say you have another week.
Okay. So you'll email anything that comes out within, the week or two, and just add it to the next agenda. If we have nothing, we can take it off, right, Phil?
Right. Yeah. That makes sense.
And Latasha, you're creating a rap? Is that what you said?
Definitely not. I'll just work on the tagline.
Tricia, did you send me do we have the mission statement somewhere in our?
Yeah, it's on the website. So if you go to chelmsfordma.gov and then just type in diversity in the search bar, and you should get the
Perfect. And then I'll attach that to the email. I'll send it out tonight to my art teacher friends, and then I'll send it to my students, who I have many students. They crossed over. So I get a lot of.
All right. Sorry.
Yeah. Good.
I'm just kind of looking at the time here. There were 3 goals on the list that I didn't hear any specific mention of. I don't know if we're assuming that they're going to be lumped into the larger goals. One was more diverse representation in the schools. I didn't hear anyone talking about that in particular, but Susan, I see your hand up for that.
Oh, mine too.
Susan and Lauren on both of those.
Yeah, I already brought it up. I already brought it up to the assistant superintendent yesterday.
Okay. All right. And collaborate with existing or new school-related committees. Is that you guys as well? I didn't want to make assumptions. I mean, I'm thinking it's you guys, but.
Yeah. Anything education, I'm there. I mean, I'm there entrenched anyway. I know Jay Lang really well now, and I know the players.
I went into him at the coffee shop and I talk to him every time I see him there.
Awesome. Well, I'm the president of the union now, so we have lots of conversation to talk about.
I know.
And the only other one that there was, I'm sorry, did I interrupt somebody?
No.
The only other one that there wasn't any specific conversation about was officially changing Columbus Day to Indigenous Peoples Day.
That's lumped in with all the town culture celebration holiday stuff.
Okay, so that's lumped in.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Yeah, I just want to make sure everything's covered. Now, I think we have 7 more minutes, and I know that there were a number of items that were actually on the agenda, specifically just reviewing the upcoming meetings and what would be covered at those meetings. So Tricia provided some of that information for us here. I don't know if there's we need to have any specific conversation about either any of these, or if this is more of just an update so that we know what's going on.
Yeah, it was just an update of what, if we start looking at meetings with some group, some department monthly, and I just figured since we had Jean Parziale on December 15th because of the diversity training she's doing with the town of Chelmsford employees, the police chief on January 19th, who's committed to it. We're going to talk about those questions next week and then get them to him within the next couple of weeks. And then the select board, January 25th, that's when we're going to do our presentation to the select board on just what we've got so far. So I don't know who, Phil, are you going to, we're going to have to pull something together for that to be able to present to them. It'll probably be via Zoom, right?
Mm.
And I just threw down February 9th as the meeting with Lisa Maroney. So I don't know if the committees that want to talk about minority businesses want to touch base with her. I'll send you guys her contact information. I may have already done that, but I'll send it to you again so you can reach out to her, maybe come up with some questions for her so she can do a presentation to the committee and you guys can kind of just start building your relationship before February 9th. How's that sound?
No, that makes sense. And the only other thing that I want to add, and I think we already may have just mentioned this, but at our next week meeting, we want to review the questions for the meeting with Chief Spinney. So I think that we want to take the appropriate amount of time to review that and make sure everybody's in sync with that.
Do we have any homework to do between now and then? Latasha and Brian, you had mentioned consolidating them. Do you want us to try to do that independently before next week, or?
No, I mean, we can talk about it then, but one thing I would suggest is I finally got started getting caught up on Emmanuel Acho's Uncomfortable Conversations with a Black Man YouTube series, and episode 9 is a conversation with an entire police department.
Right.
So I would definitely suggest reviewing that one because that I felt was very relevant to the kinds of stuff we're going to want to discuss. Latasha,
and I know Rachel had some additional questions that she wanted to add to the list. So if you have anything in mind, perhaps, just be prepared to bring it to next week's meeting.
And Sharice, you got your hand up?
Yeah, for next week, next month, well, where are we? December. One of the things we need to put on the agenda for sure is something we may want to think about in February for Black History Month. You know, just kind of put that on top of mind. We don't want to get into February. It's a short month, and then try to figure out what we want to do. So if we could start thinking maybe in January about what we want February to look like, it might be something to just kind of get ahead of.
Okay, and just to toss out, that might be a great thing. I mean, it's also preparation for our local election is in February. Well, our nomination papers are in January. So I'd really like to reach out and anybody, you know, any people of color that might be interested in getting involved in local government. I mean, nomination papers are available first week in January, and February is the time that we kind of, you know, gear up for the local election. So anyway, spread the word.
Okay.
And
Thank you for that.
Not to mention, we probably want to start thinking about what we want to do as in terms of signage, celebrations, you know, publicization. There we go. That's a word. Of Black History Month in the town, and we should probably start thinking about that right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. It might be a great opportunity for us to bring in an external speaker in February. I won't lie, I have someone in mind for it, but we can talk about it at another meeting.
Okay, great. Sounds good.
Latasha, would you like to do that at the Center for the Arts? Have the speaker there, or would it be a virtual?
It would be a virtual.
But
We want to keep everyone's health.
Telemedia can do a live
As a top
stream.
priority.
Letitia, Telemedia can probably do a live stream of it, which is great.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, just we'll talk to Pete Padula. It's
Okay.
exciting.
Sounds good. Anyone else? Okay. Well, if that's the case, it is 7:59 by my clock, and I would like to propose that the December 1st meeting of the Diversity, Racial Equity, and Inclusion meeting be closed, be adjourned.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Make the motion to adjourn. Second. Oh, fantastic.
Hi.
We'll see everyone next Tuesday.
Okay. Bye, guys.
Bye.
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 Hi, everybody.
Night.